his BCom from Narsi Mohanji College, and he has completed his chartered accountancy in 2009. In June 2019, he has also cleared 2 papers of Advanced Diploma of International Taxation on Transfer Pricing and Principles of International Taxation conducted by Chartered Institute of Taxation of UK. He has also become Certified Public Accountant of USA in 2018. Mr. Hardik Mehta has more than 12 years of experience in FEMA, transfer pricing regulations, and international tax law. He represents his clients before various authorities like RBI, Commission of Income Tax, DRP, etc. He also assists his clients who are Indian NRIs and subsidiaries of Indian companies in USA for filing their US tax returns. He is also co-author of a book which is named FEMA Compounding Orders, a comprehensive analysis book, which was published in July 2019. And he has also written, he was also part of his second volume, the second volume of the same book, which was published in September 2020. He is also a contributor to Bombay Chartered Accountants Society annual reference for FEMA portion since last 4 years. He is a regular speaker at various study circles, meetings, seminars of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society, the Chamber of Tax Consultants, and Western Region of ICI. He is also a trainer for various banks for their FEMA compliance teams. At present, he is a managing council member and convener of Taxation Committee of Bombay Chartered Accountants Society. Now, I would like to invite CA Hardik Mehta to come and take charge of the session and give us the valuable insights on the topic and share your rich experience with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dinal ji. Before I start, let me share my screen. Let me know if you are able to see the same. Is it visible?
It is being shared. Yes, it is visible right now.
Hardik sir. Sir, I will take 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you, Rinal Ben. Sir, it was a first effort by Rinal Ben. Rinal Ben, it was a fantastic effort. Please keep it up. And I also welcome.
Thank you for giving opportunity.
No, really, it was a very good effort, Ben, and result was also fantastic. And Hardik sir, I would like to thank you because just after listening your profile, we feel that it's wow. So definitely, sir, on the completion of the lecture, we will gain a lot much from this lecture or seminar. So I, from the bottom of my heart, I also welcome you, sir. And the topic of today is extremely very important. All the dear members who are listening here, because in Gujarat, sir, in Gujarat, hardly any chartered accountant will be having the practice who do not have any client, sir, who is in abroad, and on an occasional cases, sir, he may be his son or any, so he want to send it to India. And sir, the stock market is also extremely popular in Gujarat, sir. So in that case also, everybody is having some sort of transactions which are related to the international taxation. And especially, sir, FEMA is such a subject, so nobody, at least not in a routine, people are in practice. So it's a very important subject for us. And as you committed, sir, welcome again for this forum. And please take the lecture and enrich our knowledge. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Before I start, a very good evening to all of you, and I hope all of you are, keeping well, and your loved ones and your family members are doing good in this, tiring times of pandemic. I would like to thank Chowda Sahib and Gandhinagar CP Study Circle of WIRC for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on the topic for today. Thanks, CA Dinal Shah for lovely introduction. Before I start, I would like to, give couple of pointers of how I would like to go about this 2 hour session. Uh, Normally in virtual meetings it becomes a monologue if there is no interaction or there is no queries put across by the participants. I understand that study circles is a medium to enhance our knowledge and collectively learn the subject for the day. So it would be great if we make it an interactive, and any queries either you would like to post in Q&A box, or you would like to stop me anywhere in between, because I understand this is in a meeting mode. So you can interrupt at any point of time. What I will do, since today's topic is overview of capital account transactions, FDI and ECB, mainly under FEMA, relating to capital inflows in India. That is what the mandate was given to me by Chowda sir. So I think I will stick to that. Before I start, I will just let you know that I am going to take it in two parts. First, I will deal with FDI and then ECB. I would like to stop once I complete the FDI portion so that we can have interaction on the same, and then I can move to the ECB portion. However, you are free to interrupt at any point of time. So please be interactive and make this session lively for all of us, because it's a session of a study circle where we should not have a monologue. It should be interactive. Okay. So I think that was my view on the how we should go about with this study circle meeting. Before I start, let me tell you, as was mentioned that in Gujarat, or to in that case all over the India, and especially Mumbai and Gujarat, most of the chartered accountants must be having not, if not many, at least few clients who will be NRIs, some people who are having their businesses abroad, or some people who have their companies where the investors are from abroad. So in either case, people are dealing day in day out with some or the other cross-border transactions, and that's where FEMA comes into play. We are a country where foreign exchange laws are there from last many years. FEMA was enacted in 2000. Before that, we had FERA, and which was more draconian regime than what FEMA is. FEMA is basically a facilitation, exercise or facilitation regime where government would like to manage it, in the two routes, mainly automatic route and approval route. We will discuss that in detail. Whereas FERA regime was more of a, license Raj kind of a thing. I think most of the senior members must be aware that it was very difficult to practice cross-border transactions or remit money from India or receive money from abroad without any specific approval from RBI or central government in that case. So I think that is the brief backdrop of what have been the history of foreign exchange laws in our country. And normally I have seen people very well accustomed with tax laws relating to most of the cross-border transactions, but it is the FEMA law where I've seen that not many are well accustomed with what the rules and regulations are. Okay, before I move it, if any at any place, if you find my voice cracking or you're not able to hear, please stop me. I will check whether everything is proper or not. I assume that everyone is able to hear me loud and clear. So that is a caveat.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So so I think that is where I understand that most of the chartered accountants in India, tax and audit being the bread and butter practice, most of the people are aware about the regulations and how it affects any cross-border transactions, whether it is related to capital inflows in India or capital outflows from India. Specifically, today we are only going to deal with capital inflows because we are a developing country, a country where we would like to have more and more foreign investments from outside India, whether it is in the case of FDI or ECB, which is largely loans, borrowings. And I think 90% of the foreign exchange transactions are related to FDI. So I think this is far more affecting the larger number of foreign cross-border transactions. So I think that's why this topic is of varied interest for most of the charter accountants. So let's start for the day. These are basically abbreviations of the various short forms which I might use during the next 2 hours during my lecture. So okay, by the way, capital inflows are also bifurcating in two parts: capital account transactions and current account transactions. If someone has a little knowledge about what foreign exchange laws are, they must be definitely aware with these two terms: capital account transaction and current account transactions. Now, this is not our accounting thing, right? Current account and a capital account. This is far different from that. I've seen people saying that, oh, capital current account वो तो अपने accounts में भी था. So it's far similar to that. It's not. Just for the sake of explaining it once again. Here, capital account and current account means from the balance of payments of the country. Anything which you receive in terms of inflows in case of equity, loan, guarantees, all these are termed as capital account transactions. Any transactions which are in the nature of trade, largely imports, exports, remittance of expenses, receipts of income, all these are categorized as current account transactions. There is a couple of rules with both, that for all current account transactions they are all permissible unless prohibited, and a totally opposite for capital account transactions. All capital account transactions are prohibited unless permissible. Since we are dealing with capital account transaction, this rule becomes very important. So whatever is not permissible under the FEMA law, whether it is 49 Section Act, FEMA Act, rules, regulations, master directions, FAQs, if it's not permitted anywhere, you need to assume that it's prohibited. You can't take a gray area like benefit of doubt, like Section 90 of Income Tax Act, 20 or income tax, whichever is favorable, you will apply that. No, you can't take that case here. If the law is silent, that means that it is prohibited. However, it's the opposite for current account transactions. It is always permitted unless prohibited. Another very important cardinal rule for anyone who would like to practice under FEMA or are practicing under FEMA would like to keep this in mind. Anything which is not permissible directly cannot be done indirectly. So this is a cardinal rule of practice under FEMA. You can't find loopholes or gray areas and do transactions which are not directly permissible and do it indirectly, finding some or the other loopholes. That would land you in a much bigger problem. There would be contraventions for the same, and you will be facing the error of the enforcement directorate or RBI, as the case may be. So please keep this in mind, that whatever is not permissible, right, you should not do it. You can't take a very liberal view that if this is not permissible directly, I will do it indirectly. No, that's not what FEMA governs, or the regulator would like to do it. So I think this is something which you need to keep in mind. What is capital account transaction? How it's defined under Section 2E? It says that anything which alters the assets liabilities, whether it's contingent liability outside India or in India, by a person resident in India or person resident outside India. Anything which alters this, I think that would be termed as capital account transaction. So I think this is something which you need to keep in mind. This is the basic definition of capital account transaction. Therefore, any cross-border transaction which is relating to investments, loan, immovable properties, transfer of assets will be termed as a capital account transaction. Section 6 is very important as far as capital account transactions are concerned. Let's move on to that. Now let me give you a brief history of how FDI regime has been, governed over last 20 years. Okay, so if you remember, the earlier notification FEMA 20 was in place for almost 17 years, right from year 2000 till 2017 7 November, when it was superseded by 20R. FEMA 20, along with the master direction, earlier it was master circular, used to govern foreign direct investments in India. FEMA 20 was a regime which included rules and regulations as to what is permissible, what is not permissible, and it was replaced by FEMA 20R in November 2017. The same was replaced by non-debt instrument rules on 17 October 2019. Now, why this is very important to keep in mind? Because earlier to FEMA 20 and FEMA 20R were regulated by RBI. The shift from 20R to non-debt instrument rules actually gave the powers to central government rather than RBI. And this was already taken into care in Finance Act 2015, where these powers were through a bill, okay, Finance Bill 2015, which later became Finance Act 2015, was already put in place for transfer of powers from RBI to central government as far as the regulating the foreign direct investment regime in India. However, the effect was given in October 2019, where the 20R, which was largely governing the foreign direct investment, or I would say foreign investment in India, was replaced by three major, I would say, notifications. One was non-debt instrument rules 2019. Another was debt instrument regulations, which were brought out by RBI, and another was mode of payment regulations, which was also brought out by RBI. That is FEMA notification 395. What section 6.2 says? Section 6.2 actually gives powers to these regulations. What it says that RBI, earlier it was only RBI, but now it says RBI may, in consultation with central government, specify any class or classes of capital account transactions involving debt instruments which are permissible. So now it has to be done jointly. The limit for the same and any conditions which needs to be placed on such transactions. What is section 2A, 6.2A? It says that central government may, in consultation with RBI, prescribe any classes of capital account transaction not involving debt instruments. Now, what do you mean by debt instruments? Means any debt instruments which is listed, unlisted, all those will be governed by RBI in consultation with a central government. But the non-debt instruments, that is equity, your convertible preference shares, convertible debentures, right? All this will be governed by central government. However, it will be implemented through RBI. So this was a very, very important change which was brought about by central government in the year 2019 October. Now there are another two subsections of section 6 which are very important. I think most of the people's queries are largely related to this two sections, which actually solves most of the queries, general queries, and I think that is what someone needs to be very, very abreast of. These two are the very important cornerstones of a capital account transaction under FEMA Act. What it says, section 6.4 says, a person resident in India, right, may hold, own, transfer, invest in any foreign currency, foreign security, immovable property outside India if such currency, security or property was acquired, held, owned by such person when he was person resident outside India or inherited from a person resident outside India. Whenever, I think this is the most general queries people, normally also ask very casually. Are sir, there is my friend or my brother or my sister or my cousin who was an NRI. He used to stay outside India in Middle East, USA, and now he is coming back to India. He owns various shares in foreign countries, and he has also immovable property. Whether he can continue to hold the same, whether he has to liquidate the same, or whether he has to disclose to something. So this is the section which empowers the holding, owning, continuing to hold such assets after you become a person resident in India. Also, it also gives the right to a person resident in India to buy, to own, or to transfer, or to invest in any security or immovable outside India, subject to the regulations and rules provided under the extant regulations. What is 6.5? 6.5 is totally the opposite. It says a person resident outside India may hold, own, transfer, invest in any Indian currency, security, immovable property situated in India if such currency, security, or property was acquired by such person when he was a person resident in India. So most likely when people migrate from India, they have this question, sir, I'm going to US on green card, or I'm migrating to UK on a employment visa. I have got a job in UAE. So whether I can continue, holding my shares, my immovable property, various assets which I have in India. At the same time, after becoming an NRI, okay, under FEMA, can I invest in India, which is what we are going to cover today? Can I, give loans or something like that, which is capital inflows in India? So these are the two subsections which actually govern this notifications. Hence, these are important. Hence, I thought to bring to the knowledge of the participants. Now, permissible capital account transactions, as we discussed 6465, are divided on the basis of the residential status. Some transactions which are permissible for a person resident in India, and transactions which are permissible for a person resident outside India. Now, what are those transactions? Let's look upon the ones which are person resident in India. A person, we can invest in foreign securities, give loans, can raise in India, can transfer immobile property outside India, can give guarantee, export import of currency or currency notes, loans, maintenance of foreign currency accounts in India. So all these things are the transaction, and vis-a-vis the transactions by a person resident outside India, the ones which we are going to look upon: investment in India, investment in body corporate, investment in LLP, investment in proprietorship or partnership, of transfer of immovable property in India by such NRI, guarantees given by such person, deposits, foreign currency accounts of such person in India, and remittance outside India of capital assets which are in India. So I think these were the very important list of transactions which are permissible capital account transactions. Any transaction which doesn't fall in this, all are prohibited transactions. As I told, it's a cardinal rule that anything which is permissible as far as capital account transaction, they are permissible. Anything which is not permissible, they are prohibited. Now, what are the general prohibited capital account transactions? That is, you can't do business of chit fund. You can't invest in a Nidhi company. You can't do any agricultural or plantation activity by a person resident outside India. You can't invest in real estate business. You can't do trading in TDRs. Now, let's move to the two important definitions which we are going to, two important regimes and their definitions which we are going to deal with today. What do you mean by foreign direct investment? Foreign direct investment is the investment to capital instruments by a person resident outside India in an unlisted Indian company, or in 10% or more of a post-issue paid-up capital on a fully diluted basis of a listed company. So FDI is the most, I would say widely, I would say used word. Hence, I have given the definition of that. We are also going to do the definition of foreign investment separately, foreign portfolio investment separately. But FDI is of large interest. Hence, this definition is given. So what does it say? Anything which is received by an unlisted company by way of instrument, capital instrument, which is in the nature of non-debt instrument, that is equity, CCDs, CCPS, or convertible warrants or anything, all those are known as FDI, or any investment in a listed company on a fully diluted basis, which is more than 10%. Less than 10% is categorized as foreign portfolio investment. Hence, this is an important definition to keep in mind. What do you mean by fully diluted basis? Fully diluted basis means anything which is outstanding, like ESOPs. You have to convert them to the equitable shares which you are going to use issued against the ESOP, and then you need to arrive at a paid up capital, and 10% of that needs to be calculated. What do you mean by external commercial borrowings? A technical term under FEMA regime, loosely used as borrowings, loans from overseas. What does that mean? External commercial borrowings is a borrowing by an eligible resident entity from outside India in accordance with the framework decided by RBI in consultation with the government of India. Uh, I will try to break many myths which are around external commercial borrowing today for the benefit of all the participants if they don't know, because I think this is where people are very their knowledge is very superficial, and especially the clients which I have addressed from Gujarat, for them equity and loan is same. I have seen people, અરે સાહેબ shares issue કરે છે તો loan લેવામાં શું વાંધો છે, from NRI. That is a normal case. Ultimately it's the capital, right? Whether you take in equity or loan. No sir, it's not that simple. You can't take plain vanilla loans from an NRI. So I think which we will deal in detail in our second part. Okay. As I actually told you that what are capital account transactions, mainly the three, you can divide into three buckets. One is in capital inflows, FDI. Second is ECB, and another is ODI, that is capital outflows from India. What are the basic regulations which govern that? For FDI, it is Foreign Exchange Management Non-Debt Instrument Rules. For ECB, it is FEMA 3R, that is borrowing and lending in Indian rupees and in foreign exchange. And FEMA 120, that is ODI, that is overseas investment by a person resident in India. Let's move on to FDI. Now, if anyone want to practice or if anyone want to evaluate any FDI transaction, what is the literature which they would like to rely upon? These are the illustrative, and I think most of them are covered here, exhaustive list of what is the literature which you should read upon whenever you are evaluating any foreign direct investment transaction. One is FEMA, that is for non-debt instrument rules 2019, debt instrument regulations 2019, mode of payment and reporting of non-debt instruments regulation 2019, consolidated FDI policy 2017, which has now been replaced by 2020, master direction on foreign investment in India, and FAQs on foreign investment in India. FAQs and master direction are something which people refer day in, day out, because they are easy to understand, they are easy to solve your queries. All other are technical literatures like our Income Tax Act, which we generally refer when we are going into in depth. Otherwise, which normally we refer to reckoners or FAQs by the department, or the guidance given by through various circulars. So master direction and FAQs actually work in that direction. Now, as I told you, what do you under RBI regime or under foreign exchange law regime, there are two popular routes which generally you will hear people, this is automatic, this is approval. Now, what do you mean by automatic? Automatic means anything for which you don't have to go to RBI or central government to take any approval. You just have to do a reporting or a disclosure thing. Ask any question? That is that is meant as automatic route. What do you mean by approval route? Approval it is not permissible unless and until you take the permissible permission from the regulator, whether it is RBI or government. Unless you get that permission, you can't enter into that transaction. Under automatic route is not that. You can enter into transaction. It's just that you have to follow the conditions relating to the same, and you have to do the necessary compliances and disclosures. So this is what is meant by automatic and approval route. Now let's move to FDI a bit in detail. What are the prohibited industries where you can't have capital inflows in nature of FDI? What are the prohibited entities who cannot, invest in India, or prohibited countries for that? And what are the ceiling of investments? Now, once we go into FDI regime, if any of you must have heard, everyone whenever wants any capital, the first question which you will ask them would be, "Sir, आप कौन से sector में? From which person you are the FDI? From which country you want to raise the FDI?" Okay. Now, why this? Because these are the three basic questions which anyone would ask before you go to the relevant clause, relevant section of FDI regime, whether it is non-debt instrument rules or it is FDI policy. Now, what are the prohibited industries, which we will look into the next slide? But what are the prohibited entities? Basically, all those entities which are incorporated in Pakistan, incorporated in Bangladesh, all these entities need to be taking a prior approval. However, even Nepal and Bhutan can invest, but on repatriation basis, subject to condition that the amount is received in convertible foreign exchange. You know, Bhutan and Nepal, Indian rupees are widely used. Hence, this is the condition to qualify for FDI. We are going to discuss a very important press note and a subsequent regular notification which was issued on 22nd April 2020, which had a huge press coverage, huge UN relating to China and all our neighboring countries, which are now prohibited to invest directly under automatic. What are the ceiling of investments? The first question, તમે કેવા સેક્ટરમાં છો, which sector your company belongs to, from which country you are getting the FDI. What now, whether your sector is allowed to raise 100% FDI, 50% FDI, 20% FDI, whether under automatic route, approval route, those are known as sectorial caps. A layman word would be ceiling of investments. As you must be knowing, under defense, you are not allowed 100% FDI. Only 49% is under automatic route. Above that, you need to take the approval of central government. Under insurance, it is 49%, which is, I think, now increased to 74%. And over and above that, a governmental route. Under single brand retail, it is 100% automatic. Earlier, it was only till 49%. Under multi-brand retail, it is 15%, but everything is under a government approval. So, suppose tomorrow, any foreign company which is engaged into multi-brand retail, right, wants, whether it's Walmart, right, they want to invest more than 51% in India, they need to take the approval. Okay. But for Apple, which is a single brand retail, for them they don't need to take approval. They can do under automatic route subject to the relevant conditions. Pharmaceutical sector, a very important sector, especially I think Gujarat is one of the leading states where you have many pharmaceutical companies set up and factories there. There you have 100% approval for automatic route investment if it is a greenfield project. Or brownfield project, automatic approval is up to 74%, and above that you need a government approval. So these are Of the sectors which I would like to bring to the notice of the participants, that whenever you look about FDI, you need to see which country, which industry, and what sector they can. Unless and until you see this, you won't be able to advise your client or your prospective client. Now, when you go into FDI, there are also prohibitions in addition to what we dealt with the general provisions for capital account transaction. Those are though already included, but you also can't have investment in lottery business, in manufacturing of cigars and everything, in atomic energy and railway transport over and above what is permissible. And even for partnership firms and proprietorship firms, you can't even invest in print media. Okay. So these are the general provisions. Now, when you get the capital inflows in India, what is the normal route? You issue shares. Okay. What is apart from that? Suppose, can I do swap of capital instruments? I give shares in my company in lieu of the shares which I receive in the foreign company. Yes, you can do. But you need to also keep in mind the FEMA 120 ODI regulations, and specific conditions needs to be followed. Can you issue shares against import of capital goods? Yes. Can you issue shares against pre-incorporation expenses? Yes. These are the other ways of issuing shares apart from receiving money through normal banking channels to your ADs. ADs are largely the bankers. Now, another very important concept as far as foreign investment in India is concerned: repatriation basis and non-repatriation basis. What do you mean by repatriation basis? And this is something, these all are very important concepts. Unless you understand that this, you will never be able to practice in favor, or will be able to give a correct opinion on any matter. What do you mean by repatriation? Repatriation means a free flow of money in India, free flow of money outside India, net of taxes. What do you mean a non-repatriation basis? Especially in the context of NRIs. You all must be knowing NRIs can invest either from abroad or from funds lying in Indian bank account. Many NRIs have bank accounts with with Indian banks. Largely they are categorized into NRO and NRE. NRE accounts are the ones where there is full repatriability. So repatriation accounts, right? Where you don't need any permission for any authority from RBI. You can freely bring in the money. You can freely take the money outside India. No questions asked. NRO account is like a resident savings account. If any investment is made from that account, it is known as non-repatriable investment. Those investments are categorized on the same level of domestic investments. Okay. And hence, those are known as non-repatriable investments. This facility is only given to NRIs and PIOs. A foreigner cannot invest in India on non-repatriable basis. Now you will ask, okay, what is very much important for this non-repatriable? Because when you take it as a non-repatriable investment and you bring it at par the domestic investment, all sectoral caps goes, all prohibited industries goes. You can invest anywhere in any industry except real estate and print media and agriculture. So these are something very very important, and especially partnership firms and proprietorship firms can only get investment from NRIs and PROs on non-repatriation basis. They can't have investment on repatriation basis. Hence, this is very important. This is specifically covered under Schedule 4 of non-debt instrument rules 2019. Now, this is what I was talking to you when we were discussing about the prohibited entities, prohibited countries. So you must be remembering a famous instance which happened in March 2020. Because of COVID, the share prices of various institutions fell drastically. One of that institution was HDFC, which is a blue chip, and the government of Chinese through which the arm through which it does investments in foreign countries bought stake in HDFC through open market up to more than 1%. Now, they were allowed. There was no harm in that. But government was of the view, or the government feared, that because of COVID-19 pandemic, because the prices of blue chip companies have fallen drastically, there might be a danger of hostile takeovers of of good Indian companies at a very dirt cheap prices. This is the reason why government came with this press note number 3 released by DPIIT, which was subsequently followed by the notification on 22nd April 2020, which says that any investment by any entity in any country which shares land border with India has to come through approval route, that is the government approval, and cannot invest under automatic. It also applies to any beneficial owner of any entities situated in such countries. Even investments in LLPs were not permissible from such countries. Now, this was very, very important. You must be aware, a lot of Indian startups, have investment from Chinese investors, and because of this press note and this notification, the investments are being, affected drastically. But it was in the national interest. The impact is widely even today because there is no relaxation, though they are allowing on case to case basis minor investments if there is no control change. However, there is a lot of issues relating to whether China will cover Hong Kong or Taiwan, or they are separate entities, separate countries. No clear guidance has been given by the government, and any investment from any of these countries needs to be taken into government approval route. If not, then you might face the uh, government's eye through contravention through ED. I have dealt with some of the cases in last 1 year with respect to Hong Kong investments, and I think largely the approvals are not coming. Either they are rejecting or they are not approving that things. So technically today, any neighboring country, any entity from these countries, or any beneficial owner of any entities from this country, such people cannot acquire shares in Indian companies or Indian entities. Now, what are the compliance under FDI? A bread and butter practice for chartered accountants, apart from advisory. Now, if everyone must be knowing, there are a lot of disclosure and return filings, whether it is issue of shares or whether it is annual filing of foreign assets and liabilities return, which the due date is just nearing on 15th of July. All these compliances were earlier on manual basis. However, if everyone remembers, the manual to online regime was started in the year 2016 through EBS portal. That portal was revamped in 2018 through SMF portal, which is single master form. And this portal now allows you to file 9 forms related to issue of shares to foreign investors, transfer of shares from a resident to non-resident, or from non-resident to resident, that is from FCTIS. All these forms now can be filed through this SMF forms portal, forms platform. And I've just listed the various transactions for them, which forms needs to be filed within the which time limit and on which portal. Okay, for FLA there's a different portal name as Flare platform, and earlier you used to mail those Excel files. So I think this is for mainly for reference point of view. You can refer to that at your leisure once I share this PPT. Now, before we move on to ECB regime, would like to largely deal with the some of the issues and nuances on the compliances on the firm's portal, that is reporting of your FDI. Here you need to keep in mind that first you need to register your Indian company as a company which is receiving FDI and file form EMF. For that, you need to file an authorization letter. The maximum size of the authorization letter to upload would be 1 MB. The credentials to be has to be correct. If any credentials are incorrect, you need to be changing their credentials first and then file the form. Once you do your EMF filing, then only you can file your FCGPR and FCTRS or Form LLP or any other form out of the forms listed on the SMF portal. For that also you need to create a business user registration. So there are two login IDs which needs to be created for any filing to be done by an Indian investor, foreign investor or an Indian company. Mind you, this is all related to FDI, nothing related to ECB or ODI. All the filings on firm portals relates to foreign investment in India. Many times what happens once you go to file this, there are various errors which pops up. I would like to enlighten some of the errors which are very common. The once you go and file form FCGPR, there is pre-filled shareholding pattern. Sometimes that is not correct. You need to change that before you file your form FCGPR. Also, if you file one FCGPR, you can't file the second till it is approved. Okay. Secondly, there is no mechanism of revising form FCGPR. If any incorrect details have been filled, they will reject the form and you have to refile that form. Okay. So this is, I think, some of the important points. How it needs to be done. First, you do your entity registration. You file your form EMF. Then you do the business registration. Then you file form SMF, which would be FCGPR, FCTR, form LLP1, or so on. Now, what are the practical issues, which are faced? So what I will do, this is largely related to, practical issues as far as compliance is concerned. So I don't know how many of you practice FEMA on day-to-day basis. So I will just ask the group whether you want me to deal with these practical issues right now, or I deal with the ECB regime, and if time permits, I come to these practical issues. I would like to know the view of the participants, because this will take some 10-15 minutes, which is basically relating to filing issues, compliance issues as far as FDI is concerned. Any views from the participants? What they would like to deal with? Would they like to know the practical issues in the filing, or should I first take the sorry.
So let us take the question answer at last.
So this is not question answer, sir. This is mainly filing issues, for the compliances under FEMA. So whether if everyone is engaged into filing of FEMA forms, I will take this right now, or I will take this at the end. Okay, anyways, so let me take it right away, okay, and then we can move to ECB regime, okay, because this would be very much fresh since we are discussing with foreign inflows in India, equity and foreign direct investment. So when you file your forms, right, especially your FCGPR and FCTRS, make sure all the attachments are, you're able to see my screen, right? Okay, okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All the attachments must be as per the user manual. Your valuation report for the investment which is received in India needs to be not more than 6 months old. It should be 1 MB size. KYC should not be more than 1 year old. If there are more than one FIRCs, all FIRCs needs to be attached together. Declaration needs to be filed along with the board resolution for the issue of shares. Pre and post shareholding needs to be confirmed. You also need to be sure that all the excess funds, many times people ask me, sir, 1 crore ne 5 lakh આવ્યા છે, and we are going to issue shares of 1 crore rupees. Now 5 lakh is excess. So you need to send that money back. Under Companies Act, the shares has to be issued within 60 days. The same is under FEMA. And if anything excess which is received, you need to remit that money back within another 15 days. That is 75 days from the date of receipt of money. All the documents and certificates which are to be provided has to be as per the format provided under the user manual. Now, what are the practical issues faced by when you do your filings for the foreign investment received? KYC and FISC needs to be correct. Many times there is a mismatch of address and name of foreign investor. That needs to be correct. When there is so I don't know how many of you have dealt. There is also something known as downstream investment. Now, what do you mean by downstream investment? There is an Indian company which has another Indian company in India, and the first level Indian company receives the foreign investment. When this first level Indian company invest in the second level Indian company, there is a form known as Form DI which needs to be filed. Now, this is the form which needs to be filed on SMF portal. At the same time, there is also another intimation which needs to be filed on FIPP portal, Foreign Investment and portal by the government of India. Intimation has to be made to them. So this is very important. Valuation. Now here I will deal with the pricing guidelines. Most of the senior chartered accountants must be aware. Whenever the money comes in India, there is this cardinal. Once again, another cardinal rule. By any investment comes, it has to be minimum fair value. It can be more than that, but it cannot be less than that. We cannot be having loss to the exchequer. So today, if suppose something is valued at 100 rupees, you can't issue that shares or transfer that shares at 90 rupees. So minimum 100 rupees needs to be received, or 110 is fine. Anything more than 100 is fine, but anything less than 100 is not fine. So a fair value certificate needs to be, a valuation needs to be done. Today, under the FDI regime, that valuation can be done by a chartered accountant or a merchant banker. The valuation has to be done by internationally accepted pricing guidelines. Earlier, it was DCF method. Before that, it was CIC guidelines, CCI guidelines. So over the years, even valuation guidelines have been changed under FEMA. So I think this is something which needs to be kept in mind. For this valuation, you don't need to be a valuer, registered valuer. Likewise, under Companies Act, FEMA valuation can be done by any practicing chartered accountant. Reporting of right issues and bonus issues also needs to be done. I have asked by many chartered accountants, sir, money has not been received, so why we should do report bonus issues? No, you have to do the reporting. Even for right issues, the reporting needs to be done. You don't need a valuation certificate. You only have to give a declaration saying that the shares have been issued to a non-resident at par at what is been issued to a resident. So a right issue when it's made, you can't have two different right issue prices. 200 rupees for residents and 500 rupees, 200 for non-residents and 500 for residents. What government says, if you are having same price for non-residents or residents, we are fine. You don't need to provide a valuation certificate, because right issue price can always be less than or more than fair market value. Normally, it will be always less than fair market value, because right issue is already given to the existing shareholders. Another important point needs to be kept in mind: any contravention, any delay, any misreporting of filings done, or any contravention of the regulations. You are supposed to take permission from the central government or RBI before transfer of shares. You didn't take that. You didn't file your FCGPR in time. You didn't file your FCDIS time. Earlier, all these contraventions were compounded. But since the transactions increase, contraventions increase, government came with this mechanism of late submission fees. Late submission fees needs to be paid online only at the time of conditional approval of your filings, which needs to be done, and there is no compounding which is needed. So this is the matrix which provides you how much fees will be payable on any delay of FCGPR, FCTRS, FLA. You need to, for FLA it is 10,000 flat per year, but you need to calculate on the basis of this LSF matrix. Now let's move to ECB loans. Uh, as Chowdhury sir has said, I will take questions at the end. We'll keep some time for that, and I will not break right now. I will take with the ECB regime. If anyone wants to me to stop, wants to ask me anything, please be free. I told at the start, let's have this as an interactive session rather than a monologue. Because that is something which would be not it would not be in everyone's interest. So please unmute yourself and ask me any questions. Now the first, just a sec. The first slide, this is
Yes, sir.
sorry, because of some network issues, I had dropped out. Let me share my screen again. Very sorry. Able to hear me? Can you confirm?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what I was saying, there is this, misconception that by loan to chala, I can receive any amount of loan from non-residents. It's a very big myth. Please beware. There is no plain vanilla loan allowed under Indian FEMA regulations. Everything right now is clubbed in ECB regime. If you want to take in foreign currency, if you want to take in INR, you need to follow that regime. In fact, even a loan from an NRO account is not permissible. I have asked people come to me, "Oh, sir, okay, from it is not coming from abroad. The money is lying in the NRO account. Then why can't it be taken? It is his own company. NRI is holding 100%. Then why can't? Or he is investing his brother's company. No, sir. It's a very, very big contravention. Please beware. Please make sure that you don't commit this mistake, or any of your clients commit this mistake. Now, as I told you, for external commercial borrowings, what literature you need to refer to? It is the FEMA Borrowing and Lending Regulation 2018, FEMA 3R. Earlier there was FEMA 3 and FEMA 4, which was dealing with separate borrowings under INR and foreign exchange. FEMA 3 used to regulate foreign exchange borrowings, and FEMA 4 used to regulate borrowings in Indian rupees. They merged it, and a FEMA 3R was brought into place. Mastered action on ECB, and FAQs on ECB. Now, what are types of ECBs? What are available routes? And what are the parameters which are applicable? There are two types of ECBs. Since they were merged borrowing and lending in foreign exchange and Indian rupees, hence there are two types of ECBs. One is foreign currency denominated ECB, another is INR denominated ECB. Any freely convertible foreign currency ECB can be operated. Yes, any question? Okay. Okay. But what kind of ECB can be taken? It can be obtained as a normal bank loan. It can be obtained as a finance lease. It can be obtained as a foreign currency convertible bonds. Uh, there are available routes, again automatic and approval route. Anything which is less than the limits given, right? $1 billion falls under automatic route. Anything which complies with the conditions, with the parameters, falls under the automatic route. What are the conditions? Minimum average maturity period, eligible borrowers, eligible lenders, end use restrictions. We will discuss with all these things, right? These are the terminologies used in the ECB regime. They are nothing, they are simple. By period of loan શું છે, cost of interest શું છે, કોની પાસેથી લો છો, કોણ લે છે, right? All these are the terminologies which are replaced by eligible borrowers, lenders, minimum average maturity, all-in cost ceilings, and end-use restrictions. If you follow all this under the regime of ECB, then you fall under automatic route. If you don't follow, then you fall under approval route. Now, what do you mean by eligible borrower? Anyone which is, any entity which are allowed to receive FDI is an eligible borrower. And that includes startups. What do you mean by lender? Any person situated in FATF and IOSCO compliant country. Today, there are only two countries which are not compliant as far as non-cooperating, that are Iran and North Korea. However, there are many countries which are in grey list. One of them is Pakistan. So all these countries, institutions cannot become a recognized lender under ECB. And under borrower, when you say anyone who is eligible to receive FDI. So pello question, people normally, okay, so companies and LLPs can receive FDI, ECB. No. LLPs, question number 5, FAQ number 5 on FAQs on ECB clearly says LLPs are not allowed to raise foreign currency loans or ECBs from any non-residents, individuals or person resident outside India or any institutions. It says LLP can get foreign investment, but it is not getting foreign direct investment. There is a thin line of difference in the definition of FDI and foreign investment. Hence, please keep in mind, my friends, a company can become an eligible borrower, but an LLP is not an eligible borrower as far as the ECB is concerned. What are the end use restrictions? Can you use ECB process anywhere? Can you use loan process anywhere? No. You cannot use into real estate activities. You cannot invest in capital markets. You cannot invest that money in equity investment in other companies. You can't use it for working capital unless it is permissible under certain cases. You can't use for general corporate purpose. You can't use it for repayment of rupee loans unless it is permissible. You can't do lending out of that unless you are an NBFC. Okay, so these are the end use restrictions on the use of ECB proceeds. Now, what is the limit of sorry, it was not 1 billion, it is 750 million. So eligible borrower can raise up to 750 million equivalent USD from either in the form of INR denominated or ECB denominated. For startups, they can raise up to 3 million USD. Now, rate of interest. This is very, very important. the second question which normally people ask is, sir, eligible borrower છે, eligible lender પણ છે. End use restriction per parcel, right? But what is the interest rate which I need to charge? Is there any limits on that, or I charge as per the transfer pricing norms? Because generally, if there is a between two related parties, okay, it will be attracting transfer pricing. But if it is to unrelated party or related party, what is the norms which RBI says that up to certain interest you can charge, up to certain you can charge? So yes, there is a guidelines, there are restrictions. As far as RBI is concerned, anything beyond the benchmark rate and 450 basis points cannot be charged as an interest by foreign lender to the Indian borrower. So ECB in foreign exchange, suppose the benchmark rate is LIBOR, okay, then or Euribor, that is Euro Interbank Exchange Rate. So suppose that is 1%. The maximum rate can be charged is 5.5% to an Indian company. Suppose you are borrowing in the Indian rupees, then you have to say what is the prevalent. Suppose you take SBI lending rate, okay, and suppose that is 4.25, then 4.25 plus 4.50 basis point, that is 8.75%. You can't pay more than 8.75% on INR denominated ECB, that is INR loans from the foreign lenders. Now, minimum average maturity period. Can I take borrowings for any period? 3 મહિના માટે લીધા ને આપી દીધા, 6 મહિના માટે લીધા ને આપી દીધા? No. Since it affects the balance of payments of India as a country, there are specific period, there is a minimum period for which you have to borrow. If you are a manufacturing company, you have to borrow for 1 year if you are borrowing up to USD 50 million. If you are borrowing from foreign equity holder. Now, what do you mean by foreign equity holder? Any NRI, any person, any entity having investment more than 25% in Indian company is categorized as foreign equity holder. If that person gives loan for general corporate purpose or working capital, which is allowed, the minimum average maturity period would be 5 years. However, if there is an institution which is giving loans to Indian companies, then the minimum average maturity would be for 10 years. Then there are another two, NBFCs, and for them for repayment of loans, then the average maturity is 7 years and 10 years respectively. Earlier there was this issue of working capital, but now there was a relaxation, as I told, that you can take the working capital loan from your foreign equity holder. Now this is relating to NBFC, so we will skip that. Now, government recently has allowed ECB under approval route, and any individual resident in India studying abroad is also allowed to raise ECB. The draft from a bank outside India was earlier $50 million, which is now raised to $5 billion. As I told you that recently there have been, because of COVID-19, there have been many changes. One of that changes is, suppose you have received ECB and you are not able to spend that money. Can you keep that money in term deposit with the AD banks? Yes. Earlier you were allowed to keep for 6 months. It is now been extended to 12 months. Currently you can park that for 12 months up to 1st March 2022. This is a one-time relaxation as far as COVID is concerned for ECB loans. Now, what are the exclusions which will not form under borrowings? Any foreign person using credit card in India will be not termed as foreign borrowings. Any Indian persons will be using credit card, international credit card outside India, will not be termed as borrowing in Indian rupees. Trade creditors. Trade credits is a different sub-part of ECB regulations, which includes buyer's credit and supplier's credits. Most of the chartered accountants whose clients are importing or exporting, they must be aware about trade credits, which is buyer's credit and supplier's credit, which is allowed under the ECB regime if those credits is up to the period of 3 years, beyond 6 months and 3 years. What do you mean by supplier's credit for import of goods? It means the supplier which supplies you the good, it gives you the credit. The buyer's credit is the loan or the limit or the line of credit given by the foreign bank in the foreign country towards your import of goods. Now let's move to the compliances under ECB regime. We actually dealt with the foreign direct investment regime compliances. Now let's deal with the ECB compliances, which is very important. And I think most of the people who are practicing charter accountant needs to be aware about this is compliances. There are two reasons to that. Whether you advise on ECB regime or you are FEMA consultant or not, but as an auditor, since this is an audit season which is going on, you should be aware as to what compliances needs to be taken care of and whether those forms are filed or not. If you are not aware of that compliances, how will you guide your clients, or you ask your client for whom you are doing audit, yes sir, you are not compliant with. So even as an auditor, you need to be aware of what compliances needs to be done. Under ECB regime, the compliance is very strict. It is not as simple as FDI regime online. ECB regime, the compliances needs to be done physically, manually with the AD banks. Okay, and there are various compliances as far as when you take ECB. When you take a loan, you have to file form ECB with the bank along with the loan agreement and all other declarations. After that, bank will generate a number known as LRN, loan registration number. Once that number is received, then only you can receive the funds in your bank account. Or whether it is automatic route or approval route, this process is followed in both the routes. So kind of even on automatic route, you are actually first doing the compliance and then only you can get the money back. It's just that under automatic route, the compliance is faster. It is done at the AD bank level. Under approval route, the compliance is through RBI, and the application first is approved by RBI, and then the LRN is issued. After taking that LRN number and money is received, there is a onerous responsibility on the company to file form ECB2. These forms needs to be filed monthly by 7th of the next month, for the preceding month. A very stringent timeline, and if not filed in time, there is huge late submission fees, which we will see in the next slide. So this is what I was talking about, the late submission fees. Suppose if you don't file form ECB2 or form ECB, if you delay your ECB form beyond 30 days, okay, the filing fee for one ECB2 form, which is monthly, is 50,000 rupees. A huge fees, late submission fees. So I think this is something which you need to keep in mind. Now, what are the practical issues in ECB? We have touched upon the basic framework of ECB, but these are some of the issues which one needs to be dealt with. Outstanding import payables, a very common problem. Most of our clients, whether you do audit for them or you file returns, you always do the aging. Sometimes some clients, they have their open BOE in the bank or open import payable, which they are not paid beyond 3 years. So actually you need to pay that in 6 months. Under import of goods regulations, the period is 6 months, but generally extensions can be asked from the bank, and bank has the power to give you the extension up to 3 years. Once it crosses 3 years, it becomes a deemed ECB. It's a deeming fiction where RBI said that you have taken a loan from your supplier overseas, hence it becomes a deemed ECB. Hence you need to do all the compliance under ECB, and the money which is outstanding needs to be fulfilling the parameters of the ECB framework. Normally, it will never be met. An import payable will never be able to meet the stringent guidelines as far as ECB borrowings is concerned. Hence, whenever keep your eyes open, be vigilant when you do the audit. Any of your clients, if have any import payables which is outstanding beyond 3 years, please flag it as a red flag. Another point is loans from NRIs. I already discussed this in detail. I would rather like to touch it. Yes, sir. Please go back, look upon your clients where there is NRIs involved. Tell them, say, sir, you can't give loans. You can't give loans to your Indian company. You can't give loans to your LLPs. You can't give loans to your partnership firms or proprietorship firms. You know, you can't give a loan. Loans can only be taken whether it is from NRO account or it is from outside India under the ECB framework. Whether it is under INR or it is under foreign exchange, you have to follow the ECB framework. All-in cost ceilings for INR denominated ECBs. This is something which one needs to keep in mind. I know some people ask me, sir, INR denominated ECB, so we will receive money in INR. Then what will be the rate of interest? As I told you, that is linked with the SBI PLR or the government of bonds rate. Okay, it is not related to LIBOR or Euribor. LLPs cannot raise ECBs. Very clear. Recent changes we already taken care of. One of the since we I was involved in the co-authoring compounding orders book, we have went through many orders, and I have seen most of the diamond merchants or most of diamond companies and many of the companies into jewelry business, there are a lot of import payables which are over 3 years, and those becomes deemed ECBs. And mind you, RBI levies very stringent penalty. At the same time, RBI levies something called as uh, notional gain. Now, what do you mean by notional gain? So, what RBI says is, suppose you have a import payable, or you have taken a loan from a foreign person outside of your ECB framework, and if suppose that loan is interest-free loan, okay. Suppose there is an NRI who has given a loan to an Indian company, and that loan is interest-free, they will charge a notional compounding fees in the hands of the Indian company, saying that suppose this loan you would have taken from a foreign institution, you would have paid 8% interest. You are taking this loan for interest free. The 8% interest on the outstanding loan for so much of period has to be paid as a fees to the government, to the RBI. It becomes a huge and costly affair. Okay, so please be careful. These are some of the important points you need to be careful about ECB regime. Okay, what I have done, for the benefit of the participants, and since it's an audit season, I have given you a checklist that if suppose any company, any LLP, any partnership firm, any proprietorship firm, any Indian company has any FDI from any foreign investor, whether NRI, whether PIO, whether any foreign company, what are the points you need to check it? Whether the FDI is permissible under automatic route, approval route, whether you have the RBI letter if it is on the approval route, whether shares will be issued under 60 days, erstwhile 180 days, whether FCGPR filing has been done for all the ODIs, whether transfer of shares has been reported, whether FCT has it filed, FLA, which is due every year on 15th of July, whether that is filed, if there is any contravention, whether compounding has been filed, whether that compounding order has been passed, if not, whether there is any contingent liability which has to be booked in the books of accounts. So these are something points which I have just thought to bring up for the participants at last. Even for ECBs, I have put across this checklist as to check whether ECB is allowed under automatic route, approval route, whether LRN number has been received, whether your company. So I have taken this example, whether the company is limited is eligible borrower, whether it is received from recognized lender, whether loan agreement has complied with all the parameters for ECB framework, whether ECB2 forms have been filed every monthly. Okay, so all these are the important points which needs to be filed. Under ECB regime and FDI regime, you can even convert your borrowings into equity. For that, you have to file form FCGPR and form ECB2 when you convert these borrowings into shares. So this is something which needs to be filed. Even so, suppose you have taken a loan for 7 years. Suppose you extend that time period. I want to extend that for 7 years to 10 years, you have to again file Form ECB. Revised Form ECB has to be filed. If you don't file that, it's a contravention. So all these points needs to be kept in mind when you are doing audit or due diligence for a client who has raised ECB or is going to raise any foreign currency borrowings or INR denominated borrowings. Now let's deal with some practical issues which are faced because of COVID-19 on capital inflows in India as far as FDI and ECB is concerned. Very first point, delay in receipt of money against subscription shares. I don't know how many of you are aware, but under Companies Act under Companies Act, I think there is a time period of 180 days under which you have to receive the money of subscription of shares. Okay, whether that is followed or not, but if it is delayed, then that's a contravention. In fact, many times I have seen people, they have subscribed shares, the shares have been also allotted, but the money is not received. So, which is a contravention of regulation 4 of fund debt instrument rules. Now, delay in receipt of calls for partly paid up shares. You are allowed to issue partly paid up shares, but you have to receive that calls within a period of 12 months. If you delay that over 12 months, then it's a contravention. This can be because under COVID-19, I have seen many companies who are not able to get that foreign support from that foreign companies because foreign companies are also struggling. Then there is a delay in receipt of consideration as agreed for transfer of shares. When you transfer shares, government has allowed you to delay or have a deferred consideration for 25% of the value of transaction up to a period of 18 months. If you don't receive that 18 months, beyond 18 months, then there is a delay. The fourth and very common issue which I had faced when the COVID-19 had hit and lockdown was in place, suppose the money was received, in Feb 21. I'm talking about second wave, and you had to issue shares within 60 days. You issue the shares, now you have to remit the excess money received. Unfortunately, the company's office is not working. The branch is not working. They are working alternatively, okay, or they are not able to remit the money within period. So such issues were faced because of COVID-19 on cross-border transaction as far as FDI is concerned. Delay in receipt of FIIC, a very common issue. Many times the banks are unable to issue FIIC and KYC within a period of 30 days or 60 days, with delays your filing of FCGP and FCTRs. Change in valuation. So most of you must have seen this with your clients who are raising funds. Before pandemic, the company was doing good and the valuation was high. As soon as the pandemic hit, there were certain sectors which had suffered miserable, like hospitality, tours and travels, and the money which was received, the shares could not be allotted because the investor said that now I don't agree with the valuation at what it was commanded earlier. Such has delayed the process of FDI transactions and reporting of the same. What on the ECB? The same. In certain situations, the loans have been delayed. The drawdown schedule. So under ECB, you can get the loans in one shot also, in over a period of time also, which is known as drawdown schedule. So suppose I want to take a loan from my foreign equity holder of 10 CR. I can take 2.5 CR every year up to a period of 4 years. Now, suppose because some of the other issue, I was due to take that 2.5 CR in April 20, but because of lockdown all over the world, the very scary business situations, I was not able to procure that loan, and hence I had to change the drawdown schedule. In such cases, you need to file Form ECB with the bank. Any delay in repayment, a very classic case, you are supposed to repay the ECB proceeds as per your repayment schedule. Because of the tepid times, tepid business environment, the company could not pay the loan, and hence there is a renegotiation. A revised Form ECB has to be filed. Change in the end use. First, you had to obtain loan for setting up a new manufacturing facility. Now, because of COVID-19, the existing capacity itself is in excess. Why would you do the capex investment? Hence, you would use that money for working capital if it is permissible. In such case, a revised form ECB has to be filed. The interest rates. Earlier, your interest rates was, though under the overall limit ceiling, were negotiated at suppose 6%. Now you have renegotiated that to 4%. Then you have to again file the form ECB. Startups. Now startups faced a lot of issues due to COVID-19 pandemic. They were not able to sustain their operations. Most of the startups in the initial period are loss making. Hence, they needed more dry powder, and that was not available because of the COVID-19, which had affected their operations. Uh, Unfortunately, let me tell you, there was no, like in income tax and in GST, we were given relaxations in filing of our forms. Under FEMA, there was no relaxation given. However, on case-to-case basis, as far as ECB regime is concerned, under FDI, I know they didn't allow any relaxation for filing of form FCGP or FCTIS. But under FDI, some banks on the request, they allowed a delay in filing of form ECB or form ECB2. So I think this was some of the very, very live issues, live effects which can happen on the businesses under FEMA on capital inflows under FDI and ECB regime. And I think I had covered all this part. Uh, Thank you, everyone. It was really nice to have this opportunity. Now I would like to have this 15 minutes. I specifically kept this last 15 minutes for question and answer session. So we can discuss that if we are not able to discuss in between. So please feel free on any part on anything which I have not covered in my one and for 1 hour, half an hour of a discussion. I will be more than happy to answer all your queries. Please be free. Yes, sir. Any topics which you want to cover, you want me to cover, apart from what I covered on capital inflows, any queries, just let me know. We can touch upon that. Any point you want to discuss, any point you want to add from your experience.
Hi Hardik, this is Manish Vansali.
Yes, Manish, tell me.
Want to check, as you said, that any import payables which is due for 3 years automatically deemed as an ECB,
Right.
right? So what kind of compliance then I have to do? Suppose I have a client for
Right.
which there are certain dues which are over three years, right?
Right.
Then what and if they now want to make that payment,
Right.
and I have to check whether the payment can be made, and what kind of other compliances and aspects I should take care. If you can throw some light on that, please.
So the first thing is precaution is always better than cure. First thing, you should never go to 3 years. Let's be very, very clear on that. Suppose it goes beyond 3 years, you don't have any other option apart from approaching RBI through your AD bank for the remittance, for the approval. And most likely what RBI would say, we will give you this conditional approval if you come for compounding. Now, it also depends on the case to case basis. In some cases, RBI might give you the permission without asking you to come for compounding. In certain cases, they will definitely ask you to come for compounding so that your contravention is regularized. But such remittance can only be made with the approval of RBI and cannot be done automatically. However, as an auditor or as a charter accountant, you should always flag this beyond a period of 6 months. And after 6 months, up to 3 years, you can only make such remittance with the permission of AD banker. So please make sure that your client has obtained such permission and you are aware of that.
Okay. And suppose in a similar transaction, if the transaction states that the principal amount plus the company has also had a provision of payment of interest, which is basically linked to LIBOR,
Right.
right? And the principal has already paid within the 3 years' time. The interest amount is pending,
For
and
the import payables.
for the import payables, yes.
Right.
Then also the same RBI approval applies,
You
right?
can't do unless this without RBI approval, you can't do this.
Okay, okay. And suppose company want us to certify these payments, right? So apart from checking the arithmetical accuracy, the outstanding as on date, what other things we should take care?
So your rule comes afterwards. Principal you
Right,
approves, then you can do the audit verification, arithmetical
right.
accuracy and everything. You are not into the step whether it is correct to do or not.
Hmm,
There are two different issues. One is
hmm.
the whether they can do it. Second is
Right,
once approved, then you have to just check the figures and everything, which normally banks ask CS to certify. Okay,
right, right.
there's no reason to do that certification.
Okay. So if banks usually RBI approval for RBI approval, CA certification is required as such?
No, no. So CS
Not required.
certification will come afterwards once RBI approves, and banks
Okay,
normally ask that.
okay, okay. And no other provisions related to ECB to be filed or
So,
applied.
there are many compounding honors, Manishi.
Hmm.
Technically, if you want to convert it into ECB, you have to go through the stringent framework. You have to see whether you fall through that, whether that person is a recognized lender, you are recognized borrower,
Right.
cost ceiling and everything. Then you can convert it into ECB. Otherwise,
Okay.
they will say, no, कि सर आपका जो 3 साल से ज्यादा था वो डीम ECB हो ही गया, अभी
Hmm.
रीपेमेंट का टाइम आया. You
Okay.
once you are detected with the problem, you are not
Hmm.
coming upfront. Upfront is what? Suppose my there is an import payable of 1 CR from my foreign equity holder, from my holding company. Okay, I'm not able to pay that right now. I can take a bank commission and convert that into ECB and do the all filing of ECB before I complete 3 years.
Okay.
You can't do that after 3 years. Na? Once you complete 6 months, it becomes overdue import payable. So filings can only come into play if you fall into that ECB framework. In your case, if the client doesn't fall, you are right now only doing repayment.
Right.
So that's how it goes.
Okay. Okay. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Hardik bhai,
Yes,
one of
Himanshu.
the, if any trust receive any donation from the foreign entity, then what will be the rules applicable?
So, sir, foreign inflows as far as foreign donations is concerned is governed by another act called FCRA. Okay, Indian companies are not allowed to receive, are not allowed to receive any donations if you are not registered under FCRA regime. And today, if you know the amendments which were brought about 2020, there are very stringent FCRA regulations which are in place. So it's a FEMA doesn't come into picture. You are on mute, sir.
Some of the entity has sent some of the medical equipment here, then what will be the
Sir, that's what I told. You, if you are not FCI registered, have you received? It's a contravention of FCI rules.
okay.
They are very stringent, more stringent than any other queries from any participants. Yes, anyone?
Anyone have any query? Please share. I think, sir, right now, I think there is no query.
Okay.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Yes.
Yeah, sir. Okay. And if any query raises, we will obviously
Please.
intimate you by mail or WhatsApp or whatever is
No
comfortable
problem.
to you, sir.
No problem. No problem.
Okay, Chawda, sir, anything else or should I go for vote of thanks?
Chowda sir? I think he's not able to hear.
Okay, sir. So let me go for what. But thank you so much,
Yeah.
Hardik Bhai, for sparing such a precious time for Gandhinagar CP Circle. And in the era of being vocal for local, where our PM is highly promoting these things, and in this situation, obviously we gonna export much more, and we gonna receive very much foreign exchanges. So thank you so much. This was very much important knowledge for us, and we will obviously in future will also have we will be happy to have you for such fruitful seminar. I also thank all the participants for taking parts. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Please share me your PPT, sir, on email, sir.
Yes, yes, I'll tell you. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Please, sir. But
Yes.
having, sir.
Hello?
Sir,
You
sir, you are not audible actually, sir. Chawda, sir, you are not audible, sir.
Hello.
yes.
Yes, sir. Now audible. Yes.
Bas, thank you very much, Hardik, sir. And
Thank-
just I requested to share your PPT.
Yes, I will do that, sir. I will
And
do that. Yeah.
sir, it was a nice seminar, but I think still we will need it another to carry on.
Okay.
So we request you to come and if sir,
No problem. No. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
especially on famous.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, please.
Thank you
Thank
again,
you.
Hardik Bhai. Hardik Bhai, thank you again. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Dr.
Thank you.